Now, as promised, let's now welcome CEO of Inkunzi Wealth Group, Mr. Owen Nkomo, as we continue looking at the economic impact of the proposed 36% Eskom tariff hike, which has prompted NERSA to also conduct public hearings across all 9 provinces, today being the Gauteng leg. Owen, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Welcome. So, realistically looking at the current state of our economy, through the year, South Africa is improving, but reality is that we are still far from full recovery as consumers in our pockets. So where will consumers find this additional money to keep their lights on should this 36% tariff be approved?
It's going to be very difficult, Alicia, and I think that the country's going through, a recovery in the economy, but the recovery is taking forever. It's taking a very slow pace, but I think it started picking up a little bit of momentum in terms of perception that we can actually start to move in the right direction after the recent elections. But I can promise you, simply translated, if Eskom gets a 36% increase in the tariff that they're asking for, it means whatever you're paying right now for electricity goes up by 36%. Instead, we can look at it different and say it means that your budget is going to go down by that incremental portion that you're now paying for electricity. So that's quite a bit, and I think electricity is one of the most expensive things that we have in our budget lines. So it's not going to be a good thing if it does go through.
Absolutely. And I mean, recently the president highlighted in one of his speeches the current high cost of living in the country, and bearing in mind also, Owen, the way that this is right at the back of a recent increase that was followed by the disputed controversial 200 Rand surcharge in some municipalities. And politicians have failed to actually adequately explain how these exorbitant numbers are actually trumped up. So what type of social studies were performed? We still don't know. It's almost as if we're just being forced to comply, and this could potentially lead to various problems like communities totally not paying for these vital services.
Yes, 100%. And this is where we have been, where people, being adventurous with the connection of electricity, using yoga, etc., comes from exactly that. When you can't justify why you should pay so much for electricity, guys just get tempted to do the wrong things and connect illegally to the Eskom network. I do think that it's important for the government to find alternative ways to address the issue of electricity pricing. And this is why I think that it would be one of the worst mistakes to actually privatize Eskom, because electricity is supposed to be, affordable to the general man in the street. But if it comes at this price, at this stage, I think that, any further increases here just make it more difficult for everyone else. So let's see what happens, but I hope that the 36% doesn't pass. But if you look at the other side of the coin, if we were to keep Eskom's infrastructure intact and avoid Eskom from getting more debt onto their balance sheet, having been given this recent, rescue package by Minister Gauteng in the recent budget, I think that we're going to make it hard for Eskom to sustain infrastructure that can help us get electricity in our houses. So it's a very tricky affair if you look at it from both sides of the coin.
And I mean, let's look at this, Owen. This 36% increase is for the years 2025 and 2026. They're also requesting 11% and 9% for the following 2 years. So it's going to be quite a hard time for consumers who now have to, live with the reality that some sort of hike is going to be implemented by the power utility. And these public hearings we're hearing across all the 9 provinces, but the country, as it is at this stage, we never get any report back about how actually these considerations are actually taken into account when the final decisions are made. So do you think any of these public hearings are for the good of the citizens?
No, look, they are. They give us a chance to air our views to the authorities that are trying to move the pricing, to the regulator of electricity, as well as to Eskom themselves.
Are they ever considered, though, Owen?
It's never a public affair when the feedback is getting given. Consuming the feedback from the public, from the populace is one thing, but giving feedback doesn't seem to happen as actively as these roadshows are being purported to be happening at the moment. But I think what's actually very important, in my view, is for the government to take a more broader approach to this problem at Eskom, because I see us going back to a position where people are going to, start connecting illegally if pricing gets too exorbitant. That's just the state of affairs, Alicia. I think we need to move some of the budgets from those departments that we don't think are crucial and take that money and plug it into fixing Eskom for the long term. And mind you, the reason Eskom is asking for 36% is because on average they have not managed to get as high an increase as they would have desired over the past decade, because we are trying to protect each and every citizen in the country from paying too much for electricity. But unfortunately, that means they're falling back on the curve when they need to increase prices to keep in touch with inflation. And there's many arguments as well that exist that South Africa probably still pays a lot of electricity, or rather a lot for electricity in Africa and in Sub-Sahara. And that's one of those skewed things about how we price things in the country that needs to be addressed.
And I mean, IPPs were meant to actually ease some of the consumers of this burden. And I mean, Owen, let's say the hike then is approved, which it looks likely that it might be. What future could consumers, especially those who cannot afford the tariff, look like? We have record unemployment numbers in the country. There are plans to discontinue the 350 Rand grant. Honestly, are we moving toward a society where only the elite will be able to get access to essential services? Surely this cannot be sustainable in the country, not with our background as well as history.
No, look, this is not sustainable, but we live in a capitalist state, unfortunately. The state where things, you have to pay a certain price to get certain goods. This is why I emphasize again the importance of keeping Eskom as a parastatal, a state-owned enterprise. But we must continue, like the management that's just taken over the past 2 odd years has done, to make sure that efficiencies in the system are improved, so that pricing doesn't, we don't see too much pressure on pricing going forward. But like I say, it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
To try and see if Eskom can provide electricity for everyone at a favorable price. The government and Eskom and the regulator, NERSA, will have to think creatively about how we can achieve this. Otherwise, what you're saying will happen. People at the bottom of the food chain, the lower LSMs of our economy will continue to buy electricity today and it's gone tomorrow in the morning. And that's not sustainable, definitely.
Very worrying indeed. Owen, thank you so much for your input this afternoon. Mr. Owen Nkomo there, he's the CEO of Inkunzi Wealth Group on the proposed 36% Eskom tariff hike.